Assetto Corsa Competizione on console, specifically PS5, is fantastic. However, the game doesn't do a good job in helping you to get things set up. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you the ultimate guide, the ultimate beginner's guide to setting everything up in Assetto Corsa Competizione on console. So first of all, from the main menu, as you load into the game, we're going to go straight to options. I'm going to talk you through all of the options, explain in detail what you need to set and why you need to set stuff, and you'll be absolutely set so you can go racing. First of all, I go to video and I actually do enable motion blur. I personally feel this is more natural when I'm driving. I've tried it both ways and I quite like motion blur. I don't think it's a game changer, but it's just how I have it set. Everything else is completely standard in video settings. In audio, for me specifically, I have my master volume at 25%. This just allows me to edit my videos without having to change the background footage. This is a YouTube specific thing, so choose whatever you want for master volume. The only other thing I do change, and this is again personal, is I just lower the opponent sounds. I just would prefer to focus on my own car, my own engines, my own gear shifts, and not be distracted by a bunch of other cars surrounding me. So this is what I choose here. Controls, this is a big one, guys. I'm going to talk you through every single detail. Now, I would highly recommend using wheel and pedals with ACC. It doesn't really work particularly well with a controller. You can play it, it's not impossible to play, but it's a whole lot more immersive and fun with a force feedback wheel pedal setup. And I would also recommend investing in a wheel stand for yourself. Last time I tried ACC, I had my Logitech G29 clamped to a desk, monitor on the desk, and the kind of force feedback motion, it just transferred to the desk, it wobbled the desk, it wobbled the monitor. It all felt a little bit difficult. The force feedback in ACC is quite detailed, and it can quite jarring on some of the curbs. And using the wheel stand, it just disconnects your monitor from the force feedback you're getting in your steering wheel. I use the GT Omega wheel stand. It's the classic wheel stand. It's almost one of the cheapest wheel stands available. If you want anything from GT Omega, I do have an exclusive discount code CD5 on GT Omega website. Gets you 5% off anything at GT Omega. Also, with my classic wheel stand, I've got the classic rear seat frame and the RS6 seat, again from GT Omega. It just gives a fantastic cockpit, and it really gives me that immersion when I'm going racing in ACC. Now to the settings for force feedback. Now this is specific to Logitech G29, but I'll explain what each of them do to allow you to tune them for yourself. But I think even these ballpark numbers will be fine for any wheel and pedal. You can tune from there. The first one is gain. Now this is simply just the strength of the force feedback. This gain applies to all of the options below it. If your wheel feels really nice but just a little bit light, then raise the gain. If your wheel feels really nice but just a bit too heavy, then just lower the gain. This probably would adjust at the end. Minimum force is where it applies an extra force. If you've got a small percentage loading but you've got a very weak wheel like a G29 for example, you may not actually feel the feedback come through the wheel and motor. So if you increase the minimum force, it allows you to detect the small details that the wheel's trying to feed back to you. This is good to allow you to feel those sensations, but it removes a little bit of the dexterity of those small sensations. Dynamic damping, I believe, is in relation to the speed of your car. The faster you go, the lighter the wheel will become. But in my testing, I've found it just be better to have a slightly higher dynamic damping setting. Road effects are the feedback from the road through the tyres into the steering rack. So bouncing over curbs, bumps on the track, all that kind of stuff. Frequency is the number of times per second the force feedback is sent to the wheel. I read somewhere that a Logitech G29, for example, needs a lower hertz frequency, but I've tested it back to back and 400 always seems best, so I'd probably recommend staying on 400. Steering lock is the rotation of your steering wheel compared to the rotation of the in-game steering wheel. So default is 1080, which is the full rotation of most steering wheels. Now for me this doesn't quite match very well. What I'm doing is I'm rotating the steering wheel and looking at the white steering wheel in game. So I'm going to go a 180 upside down, and the steering wheel in game has over rotated compared to my own steering wheel. So we're going to go click in and change this setting. I'm going to have it upside down, and if I can find the adjustment button, I'm going to click it down. You can see it moving on screen. I'm going to keep clicking it down until the wheel in the display there matches my physical wheel, and for that it seems to be 880 degrees. So now my physical wheel matches the virtual wheel rotation, so 880 is what I will going to use. Now this may vary between some of the cars. We'll double check that in a bit. I'll show you how that works. Steering scale, this is just a multiplier. I wouldn't touch this number at all. I'd leave this at 100. Steering linearity, I'd also highly recommend to leave this at 1. Linearity is almost like an exponential curve to how you want the steering to go. It could be dead around neutral and more aggressive towards the end of the steering travel. I would leave it on 1. Just give yourself a 1-to-1 steering ratio. Brake gamma, this is where you have a ramp to the brake. I personally would leave it on 1. But if you feel the brake's a bit too keen early on or a bit too dull, you can change this brake gamma and you would see how this works, the translation between your braking input and what is listed in game. The brake dead zone, this is an interesting one, guys, because on the Logitech G29 there's kind of like a 2-stage pedal. You can hit the rubber stop and then you can push a bit further. Now for me, and coming from GT7, I hit that rubber stop, and that rubber stop is almost my maximum, whereas in ACC by default you have to push through that rubber stop and put a lot of brake pressure to get maximum brake. Now I find this a bit difficult to transfer between two games, so I'm actually going to change the braking dead zone. Now what I'm going to do first, guys, before we do that, I'm going to press the brake right now to what I feel is maximum, and observe on the screen how far the red appears up. So that's me hitting what I think is maximum brake, what feels maximum to me compared to what I play with in Gran Turismo 7. So now we're going to select the dead zone, and we're going to bring that dead zone down to where that is. Now actually, yep, I think that could be pretty good. Maybe a little bit more, just 33. So as I'm just tapping the brake to where it needs to be, I'm making sure that there's no white to be shown, or just at the edge. I think that's going to be good. 30%, I'd say. That feels perfect for me. You can do the same thing for throttle. So if your throttle pedal barely touches, mine feels okay actually, but I think I'm going to probably put a few clicks of dead zone at the top of the throttle to make sure I'm hitting full throttle. So this isn't dead zone on the bottom of the controls, this is dead zone at the top of the controls, at the extremities. Now let's go back to the top, and I'll tell you exactly what I use for gain. So I use 80% for my gain. I have my minimum force set to 0. If you feel like the wheel's a little bit too loose or free, you can up this minimum force, and it'll make the steering wheel feel a little bit tighter around center, and it give you a bit more of a tight feel to the steering. For me, I don't mind that that little bit of a loose feeling, so I'm going to go with 0%. For dynamic dampening, I actually have this at 160%. I feel like this gives me that tightness and feedback in the wheel, and really helps when the slide starts to come in. You really feel the wheel start to open up automatically. And then road effects, I have this on 20%. Now these settings on screen now is what I've been using quite successfully for a good couple of days now. These settings may evolve, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I'll keep covering these as I find new ways and new things to go faster in ACC. The other thing to do now is to map some of the buttons. So shift up, shift down is obvious, that is absolutely required. I'm going to go through and call out what I think are essential button mappings. You can go back and map other buttons for yourself. So going down here, pit limiter, I have a lot of this on the automatic. So traction control, I'm going to press the square button to unbind that. I actually have this on the rotational dial on the G29, which actually doesn't work that well sometimes, but it is what it is. But it's easy to change TC on the fly. TC is very, very useful in ACC, and you can tune it on the fly. I'm going to clear ABS. I don't want to be able to change ABS on the fly. Maybe I can do that through the MFD. I'll show you what that is in a moment. For the lights, I'm going to clear that as well. Flasher for me is quite important. I think it's good to communicate with other drivers online with the flasher, so I set that to triangle. That just matches what I use in Gran Turismo 7. Indicators, again, we can choose these, just assign them to some buttons that are useful to you. Again, communicating with other drivers online in practice sessions or in races is really quite important. Cycle camera is quite useful, especially as I'm going to show you later on. I don't bother with look left or look right. Look back, I have that as X. Again, matching my Gran Turismo 7 controls. A very useful control to assign is MFD up, MFD down. So we've got these set to plus and minus on the G29. That just scrolls you through the MFD, and then you can use the D-pad. Guys, it's important, I think, to have the D-pad unmapped in this control system, because you use the D-pad to go through the MFD. All the other things, I have save replay on my enter button, because on console replays are a little bit poor. They're only 10 minutes worth, and as a content creator I like to show the replays, and often the good bit is gone by the time the race is finished, but that is more specific to me, so I have that enabled. And then all these other things here, all of this stuff's pretty much optional. If you've got your favorite TC setting, you could assign that to a button to directly map it to that, but that's all fine. So that is what I would recommend for a G29. Other wheels may vary a little bit, but this might be a good starting point for you. In the gameplay section, in the general, I actually do choose to skip session sequence intros. You can leave it on, it's up to you, it's not going to change the game. In the assists, I actually have manual gearbox, leave the clutch automatic, I leave the engine start automatic, the wipers automatic, the lights automatic, the pit limiter is automatic. Stability control, now this is where I turn that off. This may help you, but it's something in the game where it's not realistic. It is an aid. There are plenty of other aids you can use in the car which are realistic, like ABS, traction control. The stability control, I would highly recommend to turn it off. And then ideal line, guys, this is actually a really interesting one. I would leave this visible until you get yourself up to speed, and then onto the HUD. This is where you can change the things that stay on your HUD as you're racing through the game. So gear and speed, lap time, circuit map. What I do for this one, guys, I change the circuit map to be the full circuit map. This allows you to see where other drivers are on the track. Tires, session info, all that stuff here. Radar enabled. All of this stuff is useful. Speed, miles an hour or kilometers an hour, it's completely up to you. Virtual mirror, all this good stuff. Service statistics, I actually do that, have that enabled. And I actually do disable driver tags and online IDs. For me, the tags are just so basic, they're just black boxes with white text. I think it breaks the immersion a little bit. So I personally have those two disabled. So that's going to have all of the settings sorted for you, but it's not time to go racing just yet. Before you start a career, before you start any championships or special events or multiplayer, I'd highly recommend going to single player. Set yourself up with a practice session. I'd probably choose Monza as a circuit. The circuit choice is really up to you. Monza's not too bad, some heavy braking zones. Brands Hatch is incredibly difficult. You can run wide so easily there, so I probably wouldn't recommend Brands Hatch to start with. Silverstone's quite good, can be quite flat. Paul Ricard's another good one as well. A lot of good runoffs, so that's quite good there. Misano, interesting, some really high speed corners in this one. Zandvoort can be a little bit complicated, a little bit bumpy as well. Spa could be a good one, especially if you're coming from Gran Turismo 7. You may know Spa very well. Nürburgring is a good track again from Gran Turismo 7, except this is the one with the wider chicane. Hungaroring, some really tricky corners at Hungaroring. Barcelona is quite good. Zolder has an incredibly awkward chicane, so maybe that is not ideal to start with. So for us to start with, guys, we're just going to go for Monza. It's a pretty safe track. And guys, I would highly recommend going for the Ferrari 488 GT3 car from 2018. This is a car that comes completely free with ACC, and you can just choose, let's choose Rinaldi Racing. There we go, David Perel's car. Big shout out to David Perel, huge inspiration for this channel, as well as Super GT, of course. So we're going to confirm that one. In fact, we didn't even choose David Perel. We're going to actually choose actual David Perel. Confirm. There we go. So now we're going to the realism settings. On here, damage rate, fuel and tyre wear, tyre sets, all this stuff. This doesn't have too much of a significant effect, so you can actually just switch it up to Pro, and the damage rate is fine. You really should get used to treating the car that it's fragile. It is a racing simulation. If you hit a barrier, the car's written off. Get back to the pits, try again. Having that level of danger really makes you enjoy the game a lot more. Fuel consumption, tyre sets, brake temperatures, formation and penalties on the last. This is all stuff that I think should be enabled, guys. I'd like you to get used to racing like this, so I'd highly recommend starting like that. Track and weather conditions, will keep that pretty standard. We won't go too far into that. You're just getting started with ACC, so we want to keep that pretty standard. And then in the assists, I thought I set this already. I'm going to go for a manual gearbox. Everything else we're going to keep automatic. It must not have saved actually. So yeah, manual gearbox, and then remove stability control and press X to save it. Yes, it's gone to custom now. So now we can start the session. So you hear a lot of people talking about setups in ACC, how they're critical to be fast, and quite honestly, guys, you can find more performance in yourself and your consistency than you can with setups. Until you're doing 5, 6, 10 laps all within 0.5 of a second of each other, then a setup probably isn't going to find you what you need. Most of the time you can find it within yourself. Consistency in ACC is far more important than speed. So we're just going to hit drive and we're going to head out the pits. Almost everything should be on automatic. So you get on the throttle to start the engine. This is where we're going to give it one final check on the wheel rotation. So we've got our on-screen wheel right now, and we're just going to rotate our own wheel to make sure it matches the in-game wheel, and it's close, guys. It's really quite close. You can fine-tune it to make it a little bit more perfect, but I think we are good to go. So let's just drop into first gear. Pit limiter is automatic, and you can see the track competence medal at the top corner of the screen. So before, guys, we mapped the view change button. There are quite a few views in ACC, and I don't use this view personally. I don't actually use this view. I don't use any of the views because I use a custom view. First of all, it might be worthwhile you going through all the views and seeing if there's a view by default you like. I wouldn't recommend using any of the chase cams, guys, but for me, I use the dash view, because for me, as I said in a previous video, here is my steering wheel. I've got my steering wheel. I don't need an in-game steering wheel. My monitor is behind my steering wheel, and that is the dash. However, the way my monitor is set up, it's quite high, so it looks to me like everything's a little bit broken. So we're going to press the options menu from within here, and we can go down to view settings. This is the only place you can access view settings, and these view settings are unique for each of the cars you choose. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is the height. Going to raise it up to almost get it to feel like the dash is behind my wheel, and we're looking pretty good there, guys. I think so. 7. Lateral is left to right. Distance is front to back, so if you want to go forwards or backwards, that's all good. I think it was on 9. Field of view is your field of view. You should set this so that it is an appropriate field of view for the size of your monitor and the distance your monitor is away from you. There are online calculators to calculate what your perfect field of view should be, but basically the more field of view, the more fisheye the lens is. Now you can get it quite a wild one, and I think that is a bit too much. I think 54 is the default, so we'll leave it at that. Pitch is where you can pitch the camera up or down. Again, completely driver preference. If you have covered up some of your instruments with your new viewpoint, you can put a virtual HUD of that dashboard on the screen, but honestly the on-screen HUD elements already do a great job to give you the information you need. Lock to horizon. This is the vertical pitch, how closely it locks to horizon. In my opinion, I want the camera view to be locked to my car. My wheel and the car that I'm virtually in, I want that all locked together, and I want the surrounding scenery to be moving. So I leave that on 0. Movement, I leave it at 100. Dash cam factor, I leave it at 100. That just keeps the car rigid to the camera that I'm looking from. So we're going to save that and then switch to drive. So now we've got the viewpoint. And then we're going to go and drive. The best thing to do, guys, is to not overdrive the car. Take it easy and get used to it. The ideal line is really useful. Green means you're lower than the ideal speed, so you can go faster, you can get a move on. When it goes to orange, that's when you start to need to think about braking. When it's red, it means you really need to be on the brakes. So as it's going to transition to orange, we're going to get on the brakes very early, and you can see it start to fade to green, and that's going to be a good speed to go through the corner. Curbs in ACC are incredibly challenging because some of them you can run, some of them you can't run, and you'll learn that pretty quickly. Again, down 1 gear through here, all good. And then all we're trying to do is just run consistent lap times. Run consistent lap times, you'll earn car control medals, you'll earn track medals, and you'll progress through and gain confidence. That's through Assetto chicane, just brushing them curves nicely. There are some big curves at Assetto chicane, guys, so be cautious in those ones. And honestly, it's just a case of following that green line, braking when it turns to orange, going down through the gears and just flowing through these corners, and you can start to feel the car moving around. The default setup you'll be using is the safe setup. It's got reasonable traction control, so you can just smash the throttle, no real worry about spinning out, and then you're on your way. You're on your way in ACC. You are no longer a beginner. keep an eye out for braking points. Down through the gears. Bouncing the curves there. Taking it nice and easy. And really try and get your mindset into the fact that you're driving a GT3 car. Would you want to be pushing the brake in to the very edge? Are you going to be risking your life in this GT3 car, or are you going to be a little bit cautious into some of the braking zones? I'm going to smash a curve now, guys, just so you see a big bounce on that curve there. And when the car is in the air, landing, bouncing, you have no traction. When the tyres are not touching the road, you can't get grip. You cannot get grip. So you see that the TC is flashing, guys, and doing its job. And one thing I would recommend, guys, after you've done a few laps of any of the tracks, use the PlayStation function to record your gameplay and watch it back, because in the bottom right hand corner you're going to see your throttle inputs, your brake inputs, and you need to be making sure that you're hitting your maximum braking point. So I'm going to jam on the brakes down the straight now. We need to check that we're getting full brakes, and we are. So you see the yellow bar in the bottom corner there. So yeah, we need to make sure that we can hit full brakes. When I had my brakes set a bit too far down the pedal, I found I was doing hot laps and I was only getting to maybe like 75-80% brakes, so I was not getting my full potential on the brakes, and that's why I set the dead zone. And there you go, guys, you're off and running in ACC. If you have found this video useful, guys, then make sure you're subscribed, make sure you like this video. Let me know in the comments below if I've helped you out with ACC, and make sure you subscribe. We're going to get more ACC content on this channel. I'm going to help you get faster, help you run clean, and enjoy driving a fantastic simulation that is on console. Also, guys, if you check out in the description below, if you need to upgrade your sim rig, then I've got exclusive 5% discount codes for GT Omega. CD5 at GT Omega gets you 5% off anything there, so make sure you go and check those out. Again, thank you very much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.